Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me. Happy Thursday. Happy Masters weekend. Just one of the top tier weekends of the year, and Frozen Four for those of you in the college hockey world that like to dabble watching that. I can, take all the hockey I can absolutely get my hands on and just love it, love it, love it. So very excited for this weekend. Got Frozen Four, got Masters teeing off. Guys are underway now, but we are underway taking a look at spring football in the ACC. And in particular, looking at the power rankings that I've kind of come up with, kind of workshopped a little bit. Look, it's a work in progress. When you sit here in April and you talk about teams and you talk about this and you talk about that and who they've added, one, for some teams, we'll maybe see injuries happen, maybe see game-changing decisions by the coaches over the course of this offseason still come into play. You've got the summer, you've got fall camp, you have, of course, we can get to the early goings of the season and talk about power rankings and where teams stand. But ultimately, I feel like you have a pretty good feel now with there being one transfer portal window to jump in and drop some power rankings every now and again in this offseason. I used to think in the past, I would say this is kind of a silly exercise with the spring portal window still to come. But of course, this is what we do. We can talk about the ACC in that world of football all year round. And we are right in the middle of spring football for many programs. Some already wrapped up, like Clemson, for example. But we'll get to some of the takeaways around spring football, where some of these teams stand as we get underway in the show. And really appreciate you guys who are tuned in for our show today. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't already. We love being in the live chat as well. So hopefully we get some of you guys chiming in and sharing your thoughts on the power rankings. And look, I'll try to go one by one and share some of the rankings that we've done so far so that you guys can keep up. So if you're tuning in midway through or you're fast forwarding through or whatever, you can kind of keep an eye on, hey, where's Billy at with his rankings? But let's get into those in just a moment. But first, we got to remind you guys, we're presented by our friends at Horn Legend. I'm wearing a Horn Legend polo right now. It is Masters weekend. If you have any sort of good weather in your area, Horn Legend is absolutely the place to go to outfit you in your favorite college team gear. They've got all the collegiate classics is what they call them. They've got polos, quarter zips, hoodies, and more. But of course, you can just check out their polo selection there at hornlegend.com and make sure you guys see what they can do for you, because they do have so many different options for the seasons. They've got the college prints, like I said, and they also have something that we're kind of working towards is the youth selection. So a lot of good options there. So you can match for Mother's Day. That's something that I've got on the docket for me to try and figure out what my son Jack and I are going to wear to get a good picture with mommy on Mother's Day. That is coming up. So make sure you take advantage of their free ground shipping when you grab 2 items or more over there at Horn Legend. So great friends of the show, and we appreciate their support. Go to hornlegend.com to see what you can grab off their site just in time for golf season, patio season, those nice family vacations and Mother's Day and beyond. So appreciate them. Let's dive into the power rankings. And look, I do want to spoil number one right off the bat because it's right in the header. And I do this and I try not to go all clickbaity and things like that in titles or whatever. Hopefully people find this show. Hopefully people like it and enjoy it. But Miami is number one. And we're going to work back from 17 all the way to 1. But I do want to give the flowers where the flowers are due. Miami is number 1 for me. I don't think there's anybody on this planet that is realistically going into spring or going into the fall saying Miami shouldn't be number 1 in a power ranking. One, last year's team set the stage for what can be another special Miami team. But they also have a lot of changes. And they took those changes, and it seems like they weathered them very well. I do have some questions along the defensive and offensive lines when you lose guys like Markel Bell and Francis Maui-Noah and Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor and some of those greats that they had on those trenches. But what I do know about Mario Cristobal and company is they continue to load up in that area of their program with instant impact type of players. So that is not lost on me when trying to diagnose Miami and look through how good they can be once again, because that was where they made a lot of their hay, was that ability to control the line of scrimmage. So, when you do look at Miami, you've got to start with Darian Mensah. You've got to look at what they can do in that space. With the quarterback that they have now with Darian Mensah at the helm, I mean, it's a difference maker. And hold on one second, let me shut my door. Darian Mensah at the helm, he's just an unbelievable talent. He has that ability to turn that offense into a more passing attack that, Carson Beck was kind of limited. I thought Carson Beck was somebody that came in and did his job. He led them to a national championship game appearance. That was huge for that program. They don't get there without Carson Beck being who he is. So that is very, very important to the conversation around Miami and what is next for them as a team as a whole. Because when you see somebody set the tone like Carson Beck was able to do and navigate that playoff run, navigate the late season push that they had to do to even make it into the college football playoff, it was incredibly impressive. I'm sure guys like Mark Fletcher and Malachi Tony and some of these guys that are coming back and leading this team into the next wave, into the 2026 season, are sitting there saying how he handled himself throughout all the ups and downs is something we could all learn something about. Because as we've followed throughout Carson Beck's college career, that was something that, certainly followed him, with some ups and some downs, especially at Georgia, the way it ended and things like that. But you bring in Darian Mensah, and he's got all the talent in the world. I do wonder, hey, how are you going to play when the stakes are highest? Because outside of the ACC championship game and a few games here and there, I still don't think Duke got Darian Mensah's best year game in, game out. There were gaudy numbers, there was this, there was that. But how do you manage the offense? How do you put your team in position to have the most success they could possibly have? And you end up being a team that goes on to win an ACC championship, and you got to give Duke credit, but they still did not get it done against a higher level competition the way they probably should have. And it cost them. It cost them opportunities to, be in the college football playoff and all of that. But when you see him come into this Miami offense with a Malachi Tony, with some of the weapons they'll have around him, it's really spectacular to kind of think about what he can do in this offense. And Shannon Dawson, who's got those air raid routes, he's going to have to look at how to manage those air raid routes, kind of those air raid routes with some of those route tree combinations that he has. Much more kind of West Coasty type of offense for those of you who've followed that scheme for a long, long time. That ability to get the ball out, make those screen game plays happen, make those easy throws, get you in rhythm and things like that. But you do have Mark Fletcher back. You do have that level of talent back into the fold, and you are going to have to control the line of scrimmage. But you can't forget that Miami's offense at times last year, look, they needed more explosive plays at times that are more down the field, more going vertical. And that's where I think Darian Mensah could make a difference. And he's got the ability to move around. So talked a lot about Darian Mensah. I do think he is right there with Cam Ward, Carson Beck, as far as the quality of quarterback you need to go win a national championship and certainly go get into the college football playoff. But also I am intrigued to see when he goes into that system, how does he adjust? How does he change his game for the betterment of the team as a whole? Because Miami is without a doubt built on, playing the team game at a very high level. And so that's something that's important to kind of keep an eye on there as we watch that all play out with Darian Mensah in Miami. So fascinating stuff to watch as Miami sits at number 1 in the power rankings. But let's rewind it all the way back to number 17, Boston College. Look, I feel for Boston College fans right now because there's a lot that is going wrong in the program and in the athletic department, and trying to figure out how to raise funds and how to make yourself competitive. 2-10 last year. Bill O'Brien's team has not found the quarterback play that it's needed. They're going out to Saginaw Valley State for Mason McKenzie, trying to find that Trinidad Chambliss like type of player, it seems like. And there's been a mass exodus. So they had to replace a bunch of offensive production. Their defense wasn't very good. I will say this, the defense did have a lot of injuries from what I've gathered talking with a couple people up there. So that is something that we'll be mindful of. I would love to see Boston College at least get up off the mat and get out of the cellar a little bit. Even 5 wins would be huge for them. But ultimately, I don't know how well Bill O'Brien meshes with a program when things aren't going well. And he has such a edge to him, and he has such a just fiery mentality. Man, when things aren't going well and uh, things aren't even in place to have success, that is probably a weird vibe up there in the locker room when he gets going on things. So they made some changes. They brought in a new GM. I'm intrigued to see how some of those additions that they brought in will play out, but I don't think there's any doubt you got to start your power rankings at the bottom of Boston College. They'll have to earn their way up. A team that, unfortunately, because I want to put them higher, but I just looking at my kind of way of thinking about things, I just don't necessarily think they have a good enough quarterback situation right now to be higher. And you're breaking in a first time head coach. You've got some more changes. You have a team that, without a doubt, played really hard last year. And I wanted to, like, I really thought about putting them up higher. And maybe by the time we get to fall camp and we do this again, if I don't do this in the middle of dog days of summer, maybe we'll have a different feel for it. But Stanford at 16, Andrew Luck, Tavita Pritchard, that whole organization is going through a long-term building process. And they've got to find ways to, get excitement going. They've got to find ways to raise money, which they're doing a good job of. You've got to find that spark. And maybe they found that spark at the end of last year beating Cal. Maybe they did. And that would be a huge piece to the puzzle for Stanford. But I believe Micah Ford is their returning running back who's got some talent, got some juice to him. When we talked about how good the running back rooms are across the ACC, we mentioned him as one of the best. But you have a lot of changes and a team that can't necessarily upgrade in the transfer portal either. So they're always going to be in a very difficult spot until Andrew Luck convinces the president and Condoleezza Rice to make some changes for Stanford's academics to kind of allow them in. But that is, I don't ever see that happening. And I don't necessarily want that to happen for Stanford because I love what they represent and what they want to make work. It is just going to take a special team almost every now and again to get them into contention to be one of the best teams in the ACC. Syracuse was a team that I toyed with all the way down at the bottom, but you'll see where Syracuse lands very shortly. North Carolina, though, is my 15th team. So we have Boston College, Stanford, North Carolina. UNC, I just don't feel very good about where the quarterback situation is. I really like Bobby Petrino. I don't think North Carolina has done enough to make me feel good about the quarterback room. Gio Lopez left that program and it didn't really work out. And now you've got to look at all the different options that they've brought in and see where they go, because they brought in they brought in a bunch of different options there for Bobby Petrino to try and make work. And he's going to have to, walk through that. Miles O'Neill from A&M is there. Teron Dickens from Western Carolina was added. Billy Edwards from Maryland. So they have a bunch of different options, but I kind of like Dickens and what he could bring to the table as you kind of dive into him more and more and more. He's just unbelievably exciting out of the FCS, but you still have a UNC offense that is going to be rewriting its identity. And after what was a up and down, kind of all over the place year one, the UNC defense really, I felt like, kind of carried them a little bit down the stretch and gave them a shot. If Bobby Petrino can work some magic, they'll have a chance to move up. I'm just not there yet with North Carolina. just like I'm not there believing that Wake Forest was not a one-hit wonder. Wake Forest is my 14th team in the ACC. I look at the Demon Deacons and I think to myself, okay, you lose Mateen Megarogbo, Damon Claiborne, you have a change at quarterback, you have other players leaving the program. There is so much to replace. I mean, their defensive backs are gone that were really talented. They had another offensive lineman who's a big old dude. I forget his name, but I saw him at the East West Shrine Bowl. And that's just kind of a nightmare. And so I don't know how I can sit here and say, oh, yeah, look, they were an incredible team last year. They have all, they just have a great culture. Like Jake Dickert, I like him. Let's just put him up at number 8 or something like that. I just don't see it. And that's where you're going to have to look yourself in the eye as a program and find ways to retain certain people. And maybe the building process of this roster works out almost as well as it did last year. Maybe Jake Dickert and all the players that he brought in last year, maybe we should be giving more credit to that ability to build in year one and say, well, if he did it in year one, still getting his feet wet, he could certainly do it in year 2. But think about all the players that they ended up having on that team that ended up being stars for them last year in the 2025 season. So a very special run for Wake Forest. I don't see it right now. And I don't see it with Duke. And Duke is a product of just I don't want to say broken system, because the system kind of worked in the sense that this happened during the transfer portal window. But man, that is a dirty, dirty way to do it in a sense. And Darian Mensah leaving the program, Cooper Barkate leaving the program, having to go out and get a Walter Eget and have him come in and be basically without a quarterback is just not, it's not anywhere you want to see the Duke program be. And I just don't see a world where they're one of the better teams in the ACC. And so I have them at 13. And 13 is not good, not good at all in a sense. But I think it would be a massive win if they could get to bowl eligibility and find a way to make it to that threshold again, because you can just see Manny Diaz has a way of getting the best out of his team. I just think this year is such a heavy lift for Manny Diaz to get the best out of his team because of the quarterback situation. Think about the way Duke built their program and said, we're going to go out and we're going to pay a quarterback, and have followed Manny Diaz building this program really closely, and a couple people around them as well. And the thing that has been communicated to me, I think Manny has maybe even said this publicly, but he's saying, look, we are always going to pay up for a quality quarterback. And so they went out and did that. They invested in Darian Mensah. And to see it kind of ripped away sucked. It's a different conversation. But now you look at their 2026 schedule and you say, okay, you got to play Tulane again. And you had Darian Mensah and you lost to them last year. You got to go at Illinois. That's difficult. Again, new quarterback, make his second career start. Then you get Stanford, you get William and Mary. Then you go at Georgia Tech, North Carolina, at Virginia, Boston College, NC State, Miami, Clemson, Wake Forest. Somewhere in there, maybe there are 6 wins. I don't know if that gets them out of 13th. I really don't know where that would build them up to, because their non-conference is still a difficult run there with those 3 non-conference matchups they've got. So Duke has a tough road. It's a tough lift for Manny Diaz. I've got them at 13, and I toyed with the idea of having them above this next team, but really it comes back to belief in quarterback for me. And I've said this on the show, the belief I have in quarterback is largely going to determine where you fit in the rankings. And I think, save for maybe 1 or 2 teams, you can see where my head's at on believing in their system, believing in their ability based on the quarterback as a whole. Number 12 is Florida State. Ashton Daniels, I think, is going to beat out Kevin Sperry. I like Kevin Sperry as a person. He used to live up the road, like 30 minutes, up in Prosper from us. So I was familiar with him coming out of the, recruiting process and things like that. He ends up at FSU. And I just think Ashton Daniels is finally in a system with Mike Norvell that will be a little bit better for him as a whole. Like, was out at Stanford. That's a tough situation. You go to Auburn. That was a mess. FSU, for all the kind of warts around it, I do think we've seen fairly decent quarterback play in a way. And I like Mike Norvell's ability to get the most out of Ashton Daniels here. And because of that, I think FSU is going to get to bowl eligibility. I don't know if that ends up taking them up to the level they need to for Mike Norvell to keep his job. They've got a massive game to open the season, or excuse me, open ACC play against SMU. They get a warm-up game the week before, so to speak, as they will play a week 0 game against New Mexico State. They then go at Alabama. They will get tested in September for the most part there. They do have an early bye with that week 0 game. Of course, they have 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama when they've got to go on the road for that one. And they also play Louisville, Miami, Clemson, Pitt, NC State, Florida. I mean, they just have a difficult schedule. I don't know what, Michael Alford, has to do or whatever to help his coach out a little bit, but they've got to change their schedule a little bit. I mean, you gotta do something there because you're playing 8 non-conference games. And look, Florida State next year has Georgia and Florida on the non-conference slate. So just really just savagery by FSU. I am a big proponent of playing big games, but you've got to find your line to walk here. So anyway, Syracuse is my number 11 team. I have them over FSU because I have so much belief in Steve Angeli. And I feel like you're going to see a little bit more of what we should have seen in the fall with Steve Angeli, coming off of that Achilles. I think when you see his ability to get the football out quickly, to get back to work with his wide receiver group that is going to miss Calvin Russell. It's a huge loss for them, but he really made everything go. I mean, I think he was leading the nation in passing. He was just outstanding. He's still, getting comfortable. He's not fully there yet, but he is throwing passes, taking drops. I don't believe he's doing team drills in spring football for Syracuse, but it's a massive sign that he's even out there. He's just so accurate, and I think he's going to carry them. I really do. I have a lot of faith in Steve Angeli. I thought a lot of the conversation around Fran Brown, and I thought a lot of the conversation around him making those coaching changes, I thought that was really disappointing. Just because, look, I mean, he knows his program better than anyone. He knows what's going on there, but you also have to find a way to maybe recognize that your program is going through something. Your program is going through, like, I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure Peyton Manning tore his ACL at one point with the Colts. Tom Brady tore it. You see those things happen to organizations, and it scuttles their entire plan. Syracuse's plan and Syracuse's direction was totally built around Steve Angeli and the great move by Fran Brown and his staff to bring him in late. So don't forget that you did that. So I was just really disappointed as a whole to see kind of that blown up and those sweeping changes, because I thought Syracuse was on the right track. And I think they lost a little bit of that, just thinking that Steve Angeli was the reason that happened. So I've got Syracuse at number 11. So to recap, Boston College at 17, 16 is Stanford, 15 is North Carolina, 14 Wake Forest, 13 Duke, 12 FSU, 11 is Syracuse. But my number 1 team already revealed, Miami. We'll get into the top 10 here in just a second, but I do want to remind you guys that we're presented by our friends at Socorro Tequila. Make sure you guys go to their website. The link is in our podcast episode description. Try the Añejo, the Blanco, the Reposado. You can get their tequila trio for a discount, $111 pre-shipping to try all 3. make sure you guys check that out. That is a fantastic offer for a high quality award winning tequila. So make sure you guys go to socorrotequila.com, learn more, see how the agave water yeast approach is just incredible and something that you have to try for yourself. So appreciate Socorro Tequila for supporting us at All Access AM. I go to the top 10 and littered here. I think there's a clear separation between 17 to 11 for the most part and 10 to 1 with the quarterback play. And a lot of people would sit there and say, oh, really, tell us more about how having a good quarterback means something. But I do think this group of quarterbacks has the ability to put a lot of these teams in bowl seasons, to have them have success, to lead them in maybe a special case or two to the promised land. But NC State is the one that I have probably the most reservations about because they haven't delivered despite having somebody who is as talented as CJ Bailey at the helm. And I have them at number 10. I have the Wolfpack at number 10. I thought about having them flip-flopped with a couple of different teams here, but the feeling that I get talking with people around that program is they've done enough to upgrade the offensive line. They have some quality running back options back into the fold. So how can they make things better for CJ Bailey so that all of those things work together a little bit better? So it's not CJ Bailey having to put the team on his back, because there is no Hollywood Smothers to even assist in that regard. And they have to find a way to play a little bit of defense too when they need it. And look, Dave Dorian and that staff have a lot of things they've got to work out still. But I like NC State. I don't know if we're ever going to see them take that next step under Dave Dorian to get to that 9-10 win mark. And it's unfortunate because I do think there's so much talent on that team. I think it's a much more high floor talent team than most people might think, because they haven't put it together in the wins and loss, in the wins column. They haven't done it consistently. They've been up here. They've taken down this team or that team, and then they go and lose to a team you shouldn't be losing to. So you go to number 9, Cal, kind of similar feeling, right? Jaron Kiwa-Sagapatelli is unbelievable. He should take a step this season. They have a returning quarterback who is as talented as anybody in this league. There's no doubt about that. He could be a super high output player for this team. And at the same time, Tosh Lapoy is still a first-time head coach, and they have to find a way to put all the other pieces together around him to, again, make it where you're able to control the clock or able to keep him upright. He faced a lot of pressure last year, and to play the way he did as a true freshman shows incredible stock up type of opportunity there if you want to go ahead and buy his stock. But when you see what he's when you see what he's able to do, just throwing around the football, it's just outstanding. And so I think he's going to have an opportunity to obviously build on that. But I think too, just put things together where he's going to, be, I think, this top tier quarterback in the ACC. So I think when you see a Jaron Kiwa-Sagapatelli from game 1 all the way to game 12 this year, you might see another step up in growth. They open against UCLA, where they're going to face another, head coach who's breaking in a new team as the Bruins, start that Bob Chesney era. I think Bob Chesney, coming over from, Bob Chesney. Look at me. Coming over from James Madison to revitalize that UCLA program. So a good little rivalry game-ish there. Then you get on the road at Syracuse. That's a long trip to make. Wagner. Clemson comes all the way out to Berkeley. That is a major, probably inflection point game for both of those teams. If you think about the trajectory of where Cal could go, if they navigate UCLA and get a win, if they go all the way out and manage that trip to Syracuse and get a win, okay, now you're coming into it and you're saying, okay, we get a little bit of a break here with Wagner. Let's get ready to roll for Clemson. If you get that win against Clemson, who knows where Clemson is after that, because they've got to go to LSU. They have obviously that trip to Cal. Man, if you go over in that regard, you're starting out 2-2 as your Clemson. I don't know where the season will go for the Tigers from there, but it's a scary sight because then Clemson, we got to talk about this later, but Clemson then faces Miami at home to kick off October. What a game that will be. So if Cal can navigate September pretty well, 3-1, 4-0, look out, start the hype train. It's a gettable schedule the rest of the way. It really is. I mean, there's a world where Cal jumps all the way up into the top 5 of my power rankings very quickly, or in the course of a month in the early goings of the season. And who knows? Maybe I move them up beyond this next team or the team after. And I think part of the reason why I have these next 2 teams ahead of Cal, the sole reason is I think one, I trust their head coaches immensely. I think both of these guys are just studs from a floor of the program being built. I think there's a wild card factor to one of them, or actually to both of them. But I trust Georgia Tech at 8. That's obviously not a glowing endorsement as being the 8th best team in the ACC. But I do think this league is competitive. I think Brent Key has a lot of things to replace, a lot of major moves to be made here over the course of the offseason where you are looking for a quarterback in Alberto Mendoza to come in and be a star and to live up to the level that you would hope that he has. And I think when you see where he is at come end of spring and see maybe how Brent Key is feeling about it, although he's probably going to be a little reserved, I think that is going to be one of the biggest questions of our power rankings. We'll see how the reports are. They have Justice Haynes. It's a big piece coming back. We know Brent Key is going to try to fix that defense and help out their new coordinators to make it all work and make it all seem seamless. But there's questions. There's questions in Atlanta, just like there's questions in Blacksburg, Virginia, my 7th team in the ACC power rankings, Virginia Tech. Now, bringing in Ethan Grunkmeyer from Penn State is an outstanding move. I think that is a player that, a lot of people aren't talking enough about just yet. And being able to bring him in and know that he's going to set the tone for your program that you want it to be, I think can raise Virginia Tech's offensive floor just enough to make them into a team that could very well be one of these top teams in the ACC. I don't want to sit here and buy that Virginia Tech is going to be this team that's in Charlotte come December. I don't want to buy it from the standpoint of, tell me how Virginia Tech is really going to raise its ceiling all the way up to being a team that goes to Charlotte next year. They have a gettable September. They should be 4-0 walking out of September. If they're not, we've got problems. VMI, Old Dominion, at Maryland, at Boston College. Then you get into the teeth of it. You get Pitt, you get Cal, you get Georgia Tech, you get Clemson, you get SMU, you get Stanford, Miami, Virginia. A bunch of those teams have good established programs in place, and they have good quarterback play. And you got to go on the road in certain situations. You got to face Clemson, SMU, Miami, all on the road. You got to go all the way out to the West Coast to face Cal. It's a difficult road. So you could probably see flashes under Virginia Tech in year one. I think they have a really hard time, like just based off power rankings. Like if you went down the list of, okay, this team's ranked here in my power rankings, at least, you're looking at a team that right off the bat faces 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 6 teams in my power rankings. So if you did it just straight up by, okay, where are they ranked? You're looking at a 5-loss team, you're 7-5. That's just strictly off of if you did it off my power rankings. So I think it's a hard lift there. And right now, I can't move them up beyond a lot of those teams because, one, I think they're better, obviously. But Virginia Tech has a good enough defense. If they can find a way to get Ethan Grunkmeyer into a rhythm early, get him confidence, maybe that confidence takes over like a Steve Angeli. Ethan Grunkmeyer and Steve Angeli are very different quarterbacks. But as far as a confidence level and the offense getting the job done, Can that be what we see in Blacksburg in year one? Maybe. It's going to be the one of the biggest question marks in the ACC because they've got some ability now on that team. I think they also have a high floor roster. I think Brent Key was just a bad fit. I don't think talent acquisition was good enough. I don't think talent evaluation on the offensive side of the ball was good enough at all, and that's why he got let go. And now he's back as the defense coordinator with, I think a ton of talent to work with that can get it done. Clemson is my sixth ranked team in the ACC. And the reason why is because I just have this feeling that you saw the close to the 2025 season under Clemson, and it gives me a little bit of um a feeling that they can do this. Like 4 wins down the stretch. They lose some guys that look, maybe were faded out of the culture there. Maybe they were just ready to go pro. Basically that team in the 2025 year returned all this NFL talent, all these first round picks. Cade Klubnik was in the conversation for the number 1 overall pick, and they returned all these players. And it's almost like they lost their way in Dabo Sweeney's culture and wanting to play as a team. Clemson last year reminds me of the puppy that lost his way. Billy Madison reference there. But we'll see if they get back on track and can get back to the type of team that we expect them to be. I have them at 6 because I could see this being Tate Reynolds' team come Syracuse. That would be, maybe even October. I'm not completely sold on Christopher Vizina. I think you're looking at a team that is going to need a more athletic run threat at the quarterback position. And I like Tate Reynolds' moxie. I think he is coming in as an alpha. He's already moved himself up into the number 2 really spot for that program. And he's got the ability to run around. So when you see a run game that, again, I'm not sold on that either, but I do like Tom Allen in year 2 to get his group to play a little bit more fundamentally sound and better and be playing for each other and things like that. They have some wide receiver talent there still. They have some tools. And, Clemson's 2026 schedule is daunting, but it's also at times gettable down the stretch. Like you look at it, you say, okay, you play LSU and Miami by October 3rd. And one of them obviously doesn't matter for ACC sake, but you have Georgia Southern, you have UNC, you have at Cal. Clemson, we will know a lot about them by the end of that Miami game, obviously, right? We'll know a ton about where they're going, but it can't hurt that down the stretch, then they come off their bye and they face Charleston Southern, middle of October, Virginia Tech, at FSU, at Syracuse, Georgia Tech, at Duke, and then South Carolina. There's a world where Clemson goes 3-2 to open the season and then rips off 7 straight wins, right? Would that math? Yeah, it would. It would math. And that would be a fantastic year. That would be a 10-win team. That would be a team that is very likely in the tiebreaker scenario for the ACC championship. And then you're saying, okay, we'll see how it goes. Clemson's schedule, very gettable this year. And we talked about Virginia Tech facing 5 of the 6 top teams. Clemson faces one. They face one. Right? They face one. That is wild, actually. Clemson faces one of the top 5 teams in my power rankings, at least. Now, they also face LSU, but it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of their ACC championship hopes. Getting a win at LSU would go a hell of a long way to getting them back into the mix for a college football playoff and having them have the confidence to take on Miami and figure out a way to get it done. There's also this world where we see this Clemson team just be exposed for a lack of quality talent evaluation. We see them being exposed as a lack of ability to fully change into this new era of college football. The more I looked at Clemson's schedule, the more I felt better about them being able to at least close out strong. Now, a lot of things to come for Clemson, and they'll be one of the teams that we watch obviously very closely on this pod coming into the season. Top 5, we hit them in just a second, but do want to remind you guys we're also presented by our friends at Sportsmo. Sportsmo, guys, please download the Sportsmo app today. Just go ahead and get it downloaded, create your account, start spreading the word, start creating your group, dump a little bit of money in there so that when football season comes, you can learn on the fly with us about how to support your team with micro donations and pledges that benefit student athletes directly.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
And let's get into that top 5 of our ACC power rankings. Number 5, Pitt. Mason Heinchel, I think this is year 2 for him. He's got an unbelievable opportunity to make himself into one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Like truly be on that platform. Kind of similar to Kevin Jennings going into 2025, where he ended up, being a top 10 passer. He ended up obviously having SMU really, really close in so many games that just didn't go their way. But he had his full 2025 season. Mason Heinchel took over a few games in, whatever you want to call it, and ended up going on a run and leading Pitt to relevance. They had College Game Day there for the Notre Dame game. But it really is a opportunity here with the schedule that they have to make a statement. And again, in terms of teams ahead of them, they face Louisville and they face Miami. And that's it. So they have a decent schedule to get to 10 wins. That's what I'd like to see. They don't really face a competitive non-conference schedule. I think their schedule kind of lines up fairly well. They got to go all the way out to Cal to end the season. They go back-to-back road games that aren't necessarily short trips. Louisville's far. Then they go all the way out to Cal. It's gettable. Again, gettable schedule. It's laid out fairly well for them to have a lot of confidence going into that Miami game on the road. They could very well be 7-0 going into that game. They have Miami of Ohio, UCF, Syracuse, Bucknell, at Virginia Tech, North Carolina, at Boston College. Again, very gettable. That's in part why I have Pitt high. Jakirian Turner being back, I think he's a really exciting player. I think Pat Narduzzi has proven he's going to have a good floor. Year 2 under Mason Heinchel, is this the time that he takes it up a notch and puts Pitt among the upper echelon of this league? I think there's a shot that we're looking back on this Pitt team and saying, hey, really good season. They ended up facing Miami. Maybe they get the wild card win against the Louisville and they can prove themselves and make it to Charlotte. I mean, there's more tiebreaker opportunities here. Let's assume, for conversation's sake, Miami goes undefeated. You could be looking at SMU, Pitt, maybe Louisville battling all that out in terms of tiebreakers. But you would have, let's say, and this is where it gets interesting as far as power rankings goes, but you would have an SMU, let's say, as my number 2 team, spoiler. You would assume that they would take care of business against Louisville. If Pitt then beats Louisville and their one loss is Miami, you've got SMU and Pitt, if I'm doing my math right, battling it out in terms of those 2 spots. And I guess it would be, I'm not sure how the tiebreaker would work out, but it would probably, I guess it would be really interesting to see. But going off the power rankings, Pitt could very well be a 10-win team, 2 losses in league play, and be just a really good team that's probably not in the college football playoff conversation because those 2 losses would be to 2 really good teams in all likelihood. But you're looking at a team that has an opportunity to take that next step this year. Virginia, If I am maybe having not regret, but the more I dove into it, the more I feel like Virginia will have an opportunity to keep building on what they're doing. And I don't necessarily love saying that because I just think Chandler Morris made them go at such a high level. And Bo Pribula has to stay healthy for them to take this next step. But again, you look at their schedule: NC State, week 0 in Brazil. They come back, get a bye. Norfolk State, they take on West Virginia in Charlotte, so neutral site. Delaware at FSU, Syracuse. Then you finally get your first like real matchup of September of October in a sense, on paper at least, with SMU. Then you get Duke at Wake Forest, Cal at home, North Carolina at Virginia Tech. Again, gettable schedule. That's what a lot of this kind of comes down to is, okay, do I have belief in the quarterback? Well, I like Bo Pribula if he's healthy a lot. And I think he'd do a lot of the things Chandler Morris did in Tony Elliott's offense with his ability to run around and make plays and things like that. You have a quality backup in Eli Holstein in a sense if you want to play it that way as well. But they also lost a lot. I mean, they lost a lot of that just general faith in the program with Chandler Morris being that heart and soul. So I think if they can make the skill positions work, they could be right back up in there. And again, I think they have a very gettable schedule. They don't face Miami. They don't face Louisville. They face SMU, which is the team that on their schedule is the lone top 25 team in a sense, if you're going off of certain preseason rankings. And we'll see how Louisville does or Virginia does. But number 3 in our ACC power rankings is Louisville, and Louisville is a team that I am betting. I feel the opposite about Lincoln Kienholz as I did Miller Moss last year. I think Lincoln Kienholz, people always want you to say something crazy or whatever, but Joe Burrow transferred out of Ohio State and he ended up being the best quarterback, so to speak. Lincoln Kienholz, I think is going to into Louisville, has plenty of skill position talent around him, has a great running back room. He has a really, really good talent level. This could be a guy that Jeff Brom gets a lot out of. I did not love Miller Moss last year. I did not love him going into the season. I think I was pretty clear. I think I nailed that one for the most part. I think Miller Moss ultimately held Louisville back from reaching its full potential. Outside of Miami and maybe SMU, you could make the argument Clemson, but they've just not been good enough lately. Louisville's talent level is off the charts the last couple of years. Like, they have underachieved. I know Jeff Brom gets all of these, coaching power rankings and people love him because he's just, he doesn't really talk himself up, or he doesn't do a lot of media, or he doesn't do this, or he doesn't do that. And he is a very good coach, but he's also not achieved what his talent level and roster can very well achieve. And proof in the pudding, the Miami win. Obviously, they forced, a bunch of interceptions by Carson Beck. But, man, they had some injury bugs last year. The year prior, they were a good team. They just couldn't do it. I mean, they just have so much going for them from a roster perspective. They have to kick the door down. Week 3, SMU comes to town. You can't ask for a better opportunity to get a leg up in terms of not only playoff conversation, but getting a leg up in terms of tiebreaker. That is a massive, massive football game for Louisville, and it's at home. They get it early enough in the season. SMU has not done a good enough job early in the season. Big opportunity for Louisville to really drive a stake, not through SMU's ACC championship hopes early, but you look at the rest of their schedule. They open against Ole Miss, Nashville on the road, or not on the road, but neutral site. They get SMU 2 weeks later. Then it's Wake Forest, NC State, FSU, at Syracuse, Stanford, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Pitt, at Kentucky. Gettable. We talked about a lot. And if Lincoln Kienholz is the guy that I think he could very well be, one, I think we're in for a treat week 3, that ball game. Those are two teams that I don't think really like each other very much in SMU and Louisville. I think they're not butting into a rivalry. But, man, between football and basketball, I mean, they're both kind of been punching each other in the mouth a good bit over the course of the last 2 years of ACC play. I would love to see that evolve into a rivalry. I think that's a great, 1-2 punch there as far as teams that have some staying power, teams that are showing investment. They're trying to do it in both. They've got good atmospheres, and they've been teams that have won a lot of games. That is a major, major matchup there in Louisville, and I can't wait to watch it. But I have SMU above them. And the reason why, and I still go back to this, like when I see coaches' rankings, and everybody who watches the show knows by this point, I cover SMU. I went to SMU. This is not biased, though. Rhett Lashley, when he's ranked behind Jeff Brom in a coach power ranking, I just don't understand it, because Rhett Lashley and SMU have gone out, and in their first year in the ACC, they went into Louisville and they beat the Cardinals. And last year they went and beat a beat up Louisville team, but they handled them. They really controlled that game pretty much start to finish. So give the flowers here. I think Rhett Lashley, outside of Kurt Signetti, has won something like the most games in the Power Four over the last few years, or something like that. Obviously, there's some G5 to that, but Rhett Lashley is rolling. So until proven otherwise, let's keep an eye on this program and let's see how it goes, at least in terms of the ACC. And for once now for SMU, their schedule sets up fairly well for them, in a sense where if they can beat FSU and Louisville, they should, barring some unforeseen just abomination, leave September 4-0 and be on the hype train that they can tout and deserve and things like that. And they'll go into the rest of ACC play with some tough tests. They've got Virginia, they've got Virginia Tech, they've got all the way up to Syracuse. They play Notre Dame in November. They play Cal, they play Stanford, a couple others in there that are difficult. But that Louisville game is going to not determine their season, but it's going to be a tough hill to climb to get to Charlotte if you don't have that tiebreaker, or you have to go undefeated the whole rest of the way, in a sense, to reach your ultimate goal of making the college football playoff, to get back to Charlotte. A lot of things going on with SMU that they have to hit on to make happen. So they're my number 2 team. We already talked about Miami at number 1. So look, I appreciate you guys for hearing me out on these power rankings for ACC right in the middle of spring football. So, of course, they're etched in stone. They cannot change. But convince me in the comments to change them. Convince me to chisel something new in stone and date it with a maybe midsummer ACC power rankings. We'll talk about them. Jump in the comments on our All Access AM YouTube channel and let me know where I went right, where I went wrong. Let me know your thoughts. Appreciate all of you guys for watching and listening to this edition of All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next week.